gentlemen, may I have your Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. Bass in your face.
What the hell is going on down there?
Bass in your face.
Hey guys, it's Mizzy and I'm a mixed girl in a mixed up world. Welcome to the live show. How's everyone doing? Let me get the chat up. Hi Barb. How are you tonight, Barb? I am enjoying my day off. I slept till almost noon. Well, I woke up at like 6 and then went back to sleep and went back to sleep till about noon. I want to warn you guys that my internet is being wacky. So if I cut in and out, I apologize for that. So, hi, Baxi. How are you doing tonight? So I have a bunch of things to go over tonight. I went through all the video of the people that I want to play. I'm obviously not going to play everybody from the Karen Read trial. I'm only specifically playing people that are in both cases, except one person. I want to play part of Carrie Reed's because it's just too good to watch, not to watch. So good to hear. I'm glad you're doing good. I'm glad you're doing good too, Barb. So I am going to play just a little bit of Carrie's. I'm mostly going to be playing the crosses. I'm not going to be playing, the first part of their testimony. So I'm going to be playing more of the defense's side. So before I get going, there's a few things that I wanted to. I hope my internet keeps working. Like I said, I was having problems getting it up. So I do want to share this again so I can go over some housekeeping before we get going. Yeah, I just want to mention a couple things and then we'll get. Oh, no. I apologize, guys. I think I'm going to cut in and out. That stinks if I'm going to cut in and out. I don't know what's up with my internet. It's been acting funky the last few days, I guess. But because I'm upstairs, for some reason, it acts really, I don't get, my internet doesn't always come up here properly. I'm going to have to get new boosters. So that's good. I'm glad you guys, yeah, it's been a quiet day, quiet day. I'm happy about that. So let me zoom in a little bit more. So now it's too big. So again, we're having a standout for Sandra Birchmore on May 17th, 1 to 4 p.m. across from the Stoughton Town Hall. So if you are in the area, please come. We welcome everybody. It's in honor of Sandra's birthday, which is on May 13th. So we're going to be doing a standout in her honor. It's our first one back since February, since the year anniversary of her. Well, actually, the last one we technically did was out in front of the courtyard, out in front of the federal courthouse in Boston. But the last larger one was on the 4-year anniversary of Sandra's murder. So we hope we can get a good crowd for Sandra. We will be holding a contest for the best homemade, most clever homemade sign. So please come join us. We will have extra signs, but we want to, it's a way to give away a party favor for Sandra's, in honor of Sandra, so we're going to do that. Hello, welcome. Great. Yes, I'm having a good weekend, and yes, and most of all, justice for Sandra Birchmore. Thank you for spinning, sister. Yeah, so that's the first thing I wanted to go over. The second thing, I was going to play a video from Andrea Burkhart. She was talking about Sandra on her live the other day, but I'm going to save that for Robert Devine's hearing next week. Not this coming week, the following week on the 6th. On May 6th, he has a hearing. So I'm going to save it for then. I think it'll be something good to show along with his hearing. Hello, welcome. Hello. Glad to see everybody coming in. To warn everybody who just came in, my internet's being funky. So if I cut in and out, I apologize. There is one more thing that I had to talk about, but I can't. My brain is just not working at the moment. So let me stop sharing. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to. Let me stop sharing this. I wanted to drop the website in the chat. Come on. That's the link for, is that coming up as an, oh. Did I not do it right? Did that come up as an actual link for you guys? Oh, you know what? I can't. Thank you. Love you too. Thank you. That's so kind. Whoops, it just barbs up. Thank you. That's so kind of you. But I'm going to show you guys our page. Thank you. I'm going to show you our page anyway, just so you guys can see what the Justice for Sandra Birchmore page looks like. If you haven't been there, Barb worked very hard on this. Barb worked very hard on this page, so it's her baby. So I want to make sure that I show it before we get really going. Justice for Sandra Birchmore. Yeah. So yeah, this is the page. I'm going to put me down in the bottom so I'm smaller. Hide. And so this is our page. If you, we have all kinds of stuff, Sandra's story. You can read about Sandra. Sandra's life in pictures. some awesome pictures of Sandra when she was a little kid. And tons of other pictures. We always post our events. Barb updates that all the time, and like all of our standouts. You know, I've been lately doing an upcoming hearing, doing a flyer for upcoming hearings. You know, any of the files you want to read, you know, we have the most important ones up, and you know, those you can get right there. The Justice Gallery, you know, pictures of our standouts and you know, the things that we've done, and frequently asked questions. You know, these are the top questions that we get this. We get a lot of the same questions over and over again, and we wanted to make sure we had a page dedicated to that, so people can go there and instead of like, obviously we love answering questions. If you want to reach out to us, feel free. You can reach out to us through this website. Barb will either answer your question or pass it on to me. But you know, there's a lot of questions that people have about Sandra's case. And if you're just looking for you can look through here first and see if there's something, you know, you have a question about. It might be simply already posted on our page. So, excuse me. So that's a good resource. And then we have the blog page. Oops, I'm clicking on the wrong page. Sorry, I can't even think today. The blog page, which, you know, hopefully we'll get some more stuff up in there. So I just wanted to make sure we showed you that. Feel free to please go share it. You know, like I said, Barb worked very, very hard on this, and it's, you know, a very beautiful page dedicated to Sandra. And you can get to, you know, at the bottom. Hold on, sorry, I keep trying to scroll on my screen, my StreamYard screen, but it's not there. You know, if you go down to the bottom, you know, raise public awareness, and, you know, giving Sandra a voice. And at the bottom, you know, here's where you can contact us. And yeah, so, you know, it's easy to get to us from from here. And if you're not on our Facebook page, you know, please come join us on the Facebook page. I don't know if I just went out. If you're not on the Facebook page, please come join us there, because, you know, we're getting close to 1,500. So please, if you're not on the page, please come join us there. Yeah, thank you. Barb did such an amazing job on the page, and, you know, like I said, it's her baby. So she takes care of it, and, you know, we work together to make sure that, you know, once I make the flyer, Barb will post it there, and she'll post the updates. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I shared that. Okay, let me get out of there. So I have some notes of what I'm going to go through. Like I said, I went through. My mom, she's probably so sick of the hearing, because I've watched the hearings over this week, because I've watched a lot of the testimony more than once, just so I could figure out what I wanted to show. And she's probably like, "Oh, will you please stop watching it?" I'm not going to play anything from John's mother, although, you know, my heart breaks for the O'Keefe family. You know, a mom that already lost her daughter, and then losing John must be devastating. I think, unfortunately, it was a bad choice to put her on the stand, because unfortunately she didn't come off as sympathetic. You know, she's definitely a rough around the edges kind of person. And I think, you know, she kind of proved a little bit why Karen didn't want to stay. You know, her reaction to Karen when Karen called and she said, you left him there. John was grown, and I like to say he was a grown-ass man. And if he wanted to go to the after party, he was grown to make that decision. Karen didn't want to go to the after party, so she decided she didn't want to stay. And to say that like a 45-year-old man, can't go to an after party by himself, and it's, that his girlfriend has to hold his hand isn't it's not that's not real life, and it's like I said, I'm devastated for the O'Keefe family, because they lost a loved one, and they've had so much devastation in their family already. But I think Mrs. O'Keefe proved why Karen wouldn't have wanted to stay there, from the comment that she made in the car, you just left him there. And I'm saying it nicer than she said it. And then how she's, when she gets to the hospital, she says, what is she doing here? That's why I think Jen already gotten her to her head already then. I don't know if Jen and Carrie spoke while Carrie was on her way to the O'Keefes, but if she didn't speak to anybody, they were boyfriend and girlfriend at that point. They had dated for 2 years. Why wouldn't Karen be there? So, when you put a family member up on the stand, a loved one of the person who was murdered, they're supposed to be, you're putting them on this up on the stand to not only learn about that child, but also bring sympathy to the case, because it is heartbreaking that she lost her son. I just don't feel like putting her up on the stand helped them. I think it like worked in Karen's favor, because it showed why she didn't want to stay there. Barb, if it was my son, I would assume his girlfriend would be there at the hospital. Exactly. You wouldn't be like, what is she doing here? That shows that you're hostile towards Karen already. So if you already made the comment in the car, why did you leave him? And then you're saying, what is she doing there? You're already showing that you don't, you don't. And also, Karen says that she said, he looks like he was hit by a car when Karen came back. So to the house. And that was like the last thing. Karen was like, we need to get out of here. I want to leave. I want to go back to, your house to her father. And of course she would want to leave. She Karen's a smart woman. She was seeing that they were already thinking that she did it. So I would want to leave too. So, saying that Karen, why would she leave? It makes no, it does it, as Melanie Little would say, it strains credulity, why she wouldn't leave. It strains the mind. Of course she would want to leave. She wouldn't want to be in that hostile environment when she just lost a loved one also. She's also grieving. So I just don't think putting her up on the stand was worth, what they were trying to get out of her. So, okay, so we're going to start with Carrie Roberts, because like I said, it was too good. What she had to say was just too good. And so, like I said, we're only going to go through the defense questioning of her. So let me bring it up. Whoops. Let me do this first. Oh yeah, I realized I already have it up.
the DA's office, gather information, whatever that information may be. Would you then report that information back to Ms. McCabe?
Yes.
You obviously understand the importance of providing statements to law enforcement that are free of influence of other people, other witnesses. Is that right?
Say it again.
You understand the importance of providing information to law enforcement as a witness to law enforcement free of influence from other people.
Yeah.
In other words, you want to be as accurate and as independent as possible.
Yes.
And that's because if your statement is somehow, or if your communications with law enforcement are somehow influenced by others, it might call into question the credibility of the person providing the statement.
Objection.
Can you answer that question, Ms. Roberts?
No.
Okay, next question.
Sure.
Really? You can't answer that. It was pretty straightforward. You know, Alan Jackson just wants to say, hey, you need to be honest when you talk about your testimony. That when you come up and testify, you need to be honest. You've said, you know, I am going to tell the truth, and that means you got to tell the truth. And if you're being influenced by others, that's not good. So the next part, I'm going to fast forward it to, give me 1 second. 55.
Perjury, is that right?
Yeah.
Is it your testimony that you have never said that Karen told Jen to Google hypothermia, or that you don't recall saying that?
I don't recall saying that.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at portion of your grand jury testimony from that day?
It might.
May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yep. I testified. I didn't hear it, but I was told that she was asked to Google it.
You testified under oath at the grand jury that at some point Karen was in back of the police cruiser, correct?
Yep.
Objection.
No, I'll allow that question.
Does that refresh your recollection as to what you told the grand jury?
Yes.
And isn't it true that at some point during the course of your testimony under oath, you said that Karen was in the back of the police cruiser?
Yes.
And then you went on to describe that Karen and Jen and I were standing outside, and she made us all start holding hands and starting to pray.
Yes.
I mean, what the she being Karen Reed, correct?
Yes.
And at this point, they had lifted John up and taken him onto the gurney, correct? That's
I don't
what you
know.
described.
I don't recall.
I'm going to do this again, just so we're clear.
Yep. I say I think, so I'm not
I have
positive.
a question for you.
Okay.
So, refresh your recollection.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. And you testified basically that you think, at least that's what you were telling the grand jurors, that you
Yep.
think that was the point at which they lifted John up
Yes.
and moved him into the ambulance, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
And then you were asked a question, what, if anything, did she, Ms. Reed, ask Ms. McCabe while they were sitting in the back of the cruiser that you heard, correct?
Objection.
Do you recall that?
I did not hear the question about Google being asked.
That's not my question. May I ask? May I inquire?
Just repeat that question.
Sure. Isn't it true that you were next asked by Mr. Lally in front of the grand jury, quote, what, if anything, did she, Ms. Reed, ask Ms. McCabe while they were sitting in the back of the cruiser that you heard, end quote? Do you remember being asked that question?
No.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Take a look at lines 16 through 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to wonder what Carrie's thinking about right here, because she knows what she answered. She knows what she testified there at the grand jury for Norfolk County. She knows what she testified in the grand jury for the feds. So she's going to be shitting her pants right about now.
Yes.
Does that refresh your recollection? That was the question that you were asked?
Yes.
Okay. And in response to that question, you stated, quote, at one point she asked her to Google hypothermia and how long Google hypothermia. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Did you see that attitude? She's getting mad at him, but all he's doing is asking, girl, these are your words. Why are you getting so testy for? They're your words, Hi, Coco. Good to see you. Why are you getting so mad? These are your words, girl. You got to stand on those words 10 toes down because this is what you said in front of a grand jury.
That was very detailed. You'll agree that that's a very detailed and specific recount of an event. You recounted where you were, back of a cruiser, or they were in the back of a cruiser, correct?
Yep.
You recorded or reported the time. It was right around the time that you thought they were lifting John up and scooping him up onto the gurney, correct?
Yep. I thought it was about that time. I wasn't sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that answer. You were talking over each other.
That's my mistake.
What was your answer, Ms.
I
Roberts?
thought it was about the time they lifted him up, but I wasn't sure.
You were very detailed about who was there. It was you. It was Jen. It was my client, Karen
Yes.
Reed, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
You're so detailed that you talked about where you were standing next to the cruiser open door, correct?
Yes.
What the others were doing, holding hands and praying, is that right?
Yes.
And the actual words used. You're as detailed about all of that as the actual words used. She asked her to Google hypothermia and how long, and then you stopped, Google hypothermia, end quote, correct?
Correct.
You will agree, at least for that purpose, you painted a very, very detailed picture in front of the grand jury, didn't you?
Yeah.
Except it's not true, is it?
I did not hear her ask that. I was told she was asked that. In the
The answer to my question, Ms. Roberts, and I'm not a trick question, what you told the grand jurors was not true. You never heard her, my client, ask anyone to Google anything, did you?
I did not.
And yet that's what you testified to under oath, under penalty of perjury in front of the grand jury, didn't you?
I did.
Now, if it wasn't for it being under the Norfolk County DA's office who would have to charge her for perjury, she wouldn't get charged. She won't get charged. But if it was a different DA's office and this woman lied to a grand jury, she would have to worry about perjury charges. And she needs to worry about perjury charges because if Michael Morrissey isn't the district attorney, because the election's next year for him, she might have to worry about it. So I hope Carrie is doing a lot of thinking right now.
The reason you did that, the reason that you said that false statement was because someone told you to say it, correct?
Object.
Is that, I'm going to let her answer.
Nobody told me to say it. I knew it happened at that time.
How did you
Which is
know it
why I
happened?
said it.
How did you know it happened, Ms. Roberts, if no one told you it happened?
Because we wrote a timeline. We already spoke about
So
that.
the timeline that Jennifer McCabe helped you with, that influenced your testimony in front of the grand jury, correct? Obviously.
I was telling what happened in the back of the cruiser.
The timeline
Can answer.
you wrote,
When you ask a question, let her answer, okay?
the timeline you wrote, with Jennifer McCabe's help, influenced your testimony to testify in front of the grand jurors to a statement that you never heard, correct?
Yes.
You were later asked about that statement in another investigation. I'm sorry, by another
Federal
investigator or set of
investigation.
investigators, correct?
I don't know.
Were you interviewed by a different law enforcement agency, a separate law enforcement agency from the Massachusetts State Police at any time?
Yes.
And you were told that to lie to those agents would be a crime, correct?
Yes.
Punishable by prison, correct?
I was not told that.
I highly doubt that she wasn't told that it was punishable with prison time, because they are very, very clear about that when they speak to someone. They want this person to know who is sitting in front of them, to know that if they lie to the FBI, they can go to prison.
They asked you whether or not you heard Karen Reed ever say anything to Jennifer McCabe about Googling anything, correct?
I don't know.
Isn't it true that you told them what you've just now told us, which is, I did not hear Karen Reed ask Jennifer McCabe to conduct any Google searches?
I don't recall.
So refresh your recollection to look at a copy of that.
She said she doesn't recall, because that is a way to, show that, kind of not say what you really know and kind of put that off. So you act like you don't recall, but he's not letting her have it. He's not letting her off the hook. He's going to show her what her words were in front of that grand jury for the federal government.
Interview on that report.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at the entire document to familiarize yourself with it, if you don't mind. Including the front page. And don't answer anything about the document until I ask you a question, if you don't mind, please.
Sure.
Thank you. Ms. Roberts, do you recognize that as being a report of an interview that you conducted?
I've never seen this before, but
Understood. Yeah, you may never have seen it, but does it remind you that that's
Yes.
a report of a conversation you had with another law enforcement agency? I'm going to ask you to turn to page 7 of that report. And if you look, there's a small paragraph, about 2 paragraphs up from the bottom. I think I may have put a little blue dot by it, but I'm not sure. Please read that to yourself.
correct.
Done?
Yep.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. Roberts. Ms. Roberts, does that refresh your recollection about what you told these investigators?
Yes.
And what you told them was
Did you hear her voice crack oh so slightly? Because she knows. She knows she's fucked. She absolutely knows.
quote, did not hear Karen Reed ask Jennifer McCabe to conduct any Google
That is
search.
correct.
And you went on to say, you saw McCabe on her
Objection.
phone.
I'll allow it.
You saw McCabe on her phone, but you did not hear Karen ask Jennifer to Google anything.
Correct.
So what you told the grand jurors was in fact false.
I misunderstood Mr. Lally's question.
Got it.
She misunderstood Lally's question. Sure you did. Sure you did. You already said that you went over the timeline with Jennifer McCabe, and that was why Jennifer McCabe, wanted to go through the timeline with her. They wanted to make sure that things that Carrie didn't know, she would say. And it makes you wonder what else was in there that on that timeline that isn't, that we don't know about. What else was put in Carrie's head during that timeline? Because, there are things that have been said, like, about, I hit him, or could I have hit him? Those things, if those things were put in Carrie's head, saying, as they're going through a timeline, that's not good. That's not good for Carrie. Welcome everybody who just came in. Thank you for joining us. Let me go back to the chat. I fully agree with that. Morrissey needs to go now. Ugh. He's so in the middle of this all. He is. And I think things are coming out. Things are, there was an affidavit signed by the penalties of perjury in Turtle Boy's case, saying Michael Morrissey has been doing a lot of shady stuff. And, it was filed, Mark Betterow, who filed in Turtle Boy's case about it. And I can't wait to see what transpires with all of that. Because if it is all true what this woman, signed, like I said, under the penalties of perjury, and she knows that Morrissey will go after her if she's lying. And if hopefully she has proof of some of the stuff that she was saying, it's, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. But let's get back to it. Let me see what next I wanted to play. Sorry.
Did you generalize your answer?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you begin your answer with at one point?
Yes.
When you chose the words at one point, what were you trying to convey to the grand jury?
I'll allow that.
I didn't know at what time it was done.
Was that a topic of conversation around the time you were brought to the grand jury?
Around the time what?
That you were brought to the grand jury to testify? There's a Google search.
Was it? I don't know.
Okay. Were you asked here in front of this jury whether or not you personally heard that statement?
Yes.
By me.
Oh.
Did I ask you that question?
No.
Did you personally hear that statement?
No.
After this happened, you discussed what had happened with people, didn't you?
I'm sorry, say it again.
After you found John lying in the snow, did you discuss what had happened, what you saw with other people?
Yes, of
Did
course.
anybody tell you that you couldn't discuss the trauma that you had been through?
Objection.
I'm going to allow that.
Say it again.
Did anybody tell you that you couldn't discuss what you had just seen?
No. Didn't say it again? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
After you found John that morning, did anybody, civilian or law enforcement, ever tell you you weren't allowed to discuss what you had just went through?
No.
Brennan is being so disingenuous there. You know, it's not a matter of, you know, what she did here wasn't a matter of discussing it with other people. She wasn't, you know, telling her husband what happened or speaking to her best friend what happened. No, she physically sat down with the other witness and talked about what they saw and said. And Jen said that this happened and Kerry testified that it happened. But I find it funny that this, you know, this is one of the big, you know, things in the case where, you know, the defense is saying one thing and the prosecution is saying something else about the Google search. Hi, Boston Brandy. How are you? How's it going? Thank you for joining us. You know, it's a big contention in this case, you know, about this Google search. And she was a witness saying that she heard Karen ask to search for the Google search. And she didn't. She lied. And it's funny that Jen was putting it out there even back in 2022 about this Google search. If this Google search was on the up and up, why would it have to be such a big thing? It's because she was trying to cover up for the 227 Google search. It makes no sense. Okay, so let me go to another section because I don't feel like listening to Brennan that much.
Say that one more time.
You were asked whether you heard any comments about her saying she dropped him off.
In the car on the way to the hospital.
Okay.
She said it to Mrs. O'Keefe.
When you were outside trying to help John, were you ever told where the defendant dropped John off?
No,
Were you ever told where he was left?
no,
Was it ever suggested that he went into 34 Fairview?
no,
Was it ever suggested that he went into any house whatsoever that morning?
no,
Were you ever asked to go into the house to look for him?
no.
Brennan, that was the dumbest fucking question. They found John on the lawn. Why would they go in the house looking for him? That was the dumbest fucking question. That's the only reason why I put it in that part in there, because it was fucking dumb. All right. 15.
I wasn't supposed to stay in Canton, and Kaylee was here. He would never leave Kaylee by herself.
Did anybody ever ask you to lie
No,
or exaggerate?
no.
Would you?
Say that?
Would you?
No.
Sustained.
You were asked whether or not.
Jen didn't have to ask her to lie. All she had to do was put the suggestion there. She thinks that what Jen is telling her is the truth. She's being told that Karen did this, and she thinks Jen is telling the truth. All I've got to say is, Carrie, you really, really need to sit and think about what your friend has been telling you, and she is setting you up to fail, and she set you up. And so did Brennan, because Brennan knew that this was coming. He knew that there was a chance that this could come. And he didn't say, hey, you know what? you lied to the feds. You might want to make sure you have a lawyer. You might want to make sure you have a lawyer present. And he didn't. They didn't give her this advice. They should have. So once again, the McAlberts were put above everyone else. They were put above other witnesses. Okay, 119.
There's no further questions.
Okay, so recross.
Just asked, just a few minutes ago. Did you ever say that you actually heard that statement about that Google search? And you said no.
Correct.
The question that was posed to you by Mr. Lally was, what, if anything, did she, Miss Reed, ask Miss McCabe while they were sitting in the back of the cruiser that you heard?
Right.
Correct?
I misunderstood the
And
question.
you misunderstood that question?
Yes.
What
I
did you
did.
misunderstand about that question?
I didn't know it was that you heard, so I was explaining what happened in the back of the car.
I see. So you just ignored the part, literally, the part of the question where he said, what?
Yes, but that would be considered hearsay. It would be hearsay if she was just explaining what Janet told her. And that's not allowed to happen. I know a lot of people don't know about some of these terms, but she's not allowed to say. She can say what Karen told her, but she can't say what somebody else told her. It would be hearsay. So she's lying. She knows she's caught, and she's shitting her pants, and she knows that she's fucked. So, whoops. Hi, Subi. Thank you for joining us. Lovely to see you. Yeah, it would be nice if she got in trouble for it, but like I said before you came in, it's the person who would prosecute her is Michael Morrissey, and he's not going to prosecute her. She might be in danger for if Michael Morrissey is voted out of office, and hopefully he is. So, yeah. So Anthony from Ohio, if she didn't understand the question, why did she answer the question? Yeah, because you could see that Carrie isn't a shrinking violet. She's had no problem answering the question or asking for the question to be clarified or asking for it to be said again. So she's lying. It's not a hard question to understand the meaning of. It's not like he was saying all these big words and it was a straightforward question. So we know she's full of shit. So
Did you hear her say?
I think the word was heard, and I didn't hear it. I obviously got the question wrong because I did not hear anybody ask about a Google search.
Well, I know that.
Ooh, Carrie, your anger is showing. And you should be angry at yourself. You should be angry at yourself for believing your dear, dear friend, Jennifer McCabe. Because Jen doesn't care about you. You were just somebody that she had and could put in her pocket and shovel information to that would end up backing her up. And you played that part perfectly for Jennifer McCabe. She isn't your friend.
Well, that's what you're saying now. I get that. But when you were asked, what, if anything, did she ask Miss McCabe while they were sitting in the back of the cruiser that you heard, your immediate answer was, at one point, she asked her to Google hypothermia and how long dash Google hypothermia, end quote. Correct?
Correct.
That was your answer.
Yes.
Correct?
To a question I misunderstood.
And that was a false statement, wasn't it?
Technically.
Technically?
Yes,
It's like being a little
technically.
bit pregnant, Ms. Roberts.
Okay, so remember, jurors, I said earlier, comments of counsel are not evidence and you're to disregard them. Ask a question.
Answering that question technically, now you're kind of backpedaling to try to cover your ass. Girl, we already heard. We already heard what you said. You lied.
Thank you, Your Honor. What do you mean technically?
Technically, I was under oath and I did not hear Karen asked Jen to Google it,
And yet under oath.
but I knew it happened at that
And
time.
yet under oath you said you did.
Correct.
And that was a lie, correct?
Objection.
Was that a lie? Did you lie?
I did not intentionally,
But you did.
And,
not intentionally.
okay, that's the end of
Understood
this.
the question, Mr. Jackson.
All right, is there any other question or is that it?
I didn't hear what you just said.
I said I misunderstood the question,
you
Mr.
didn't.
Jackson.
No, you didn't.
That's what you're saying now, correct?
That's what happened.
All right,
Can I ask one more question?
okay.
In that quote, you said, at one point she asked her to Google hypothermia and how long. Then you corrected yourself and finished with Google hypothermia. What did you mean by how long? What were you about to say?
I don't recall.
Had someone told you something about a phrase that started with how long?
I don't recall.
Hypothermia?
I don't recall.
You saw her. You saw the wheels turning on. You know. You saw that.
Like, for instance, how long to die in cold?
I don't recall.
Okay. All right, Ms. McKay, I'm sorry, Ms. Roberts, you're up.
Miss McCabe. Oops. Oops. That part when she called her Miss McCabe was like chef's kiss. You know. All I have to say is, you know, as Whoopi said in Ghosts, you in danger, girl. Carrie, you are in danger because that's not your friend. Jen McCabe is not your friend at all whatsoever. She does not care about you. She does not care that you just perjured yourself. And it's wrong that, you know, she would allow, if she cared about you, she wouldn't have allowed you to do that, you know. So what are your thoughts on Carrie's performance, I should say it that way, because, you know, you don't set your real friends up to fail like that. Not at all. So the next person I'm going to play is Daniel Whitley. He is the paramedic. Let me see. I want to show you guys something else, something before I do it. You know what? I'm just going to read it from my phone so I don't have to even go into that. Let me do. Let me bring it up on my phone. I should have it right there. Oh, hold on. Okay. Let me see here. just so I'm showing that, he was called. Canton Fire, this is from the Massachusetts State Police, their report on the Sandra Birchmore case. And this is the part about Whitley. It's just a little blurb. Canton Fire Department personnel were notified and responded. Birchmore was then determined to be deceased at approximately 11:46 a.m. by firefighter paramedic Daniel Whitley. I've been researching. I don't. Do we have any paramedics in the chat by any chance? If there's anybody, I would love to ask a question. So, but it doesn't seem like we have any. I've been asking. I've been trying to figure out if a paramedic can actually call a death, because I thought only a doctor could. But they might be able to say there's no sign of life, so there's no it's not technically calling the death, it's just saying there's no signs of life, there's no life-saving care that we could give, so this person is deceased, but they're not technically calling them dead. I'm trying to figure it out, because I found a law that says only a doctor, okay, Bev. No, I'm talking about Sandra right now. Daniel Whitley was that what I just read was part of the Sandra Birchmore case. He was the paramedic that was called to Sandra's apartment on February 4th, 2021. The next two witnesses that we're going to go over is hold on. Polly Pocket says, I was an RRT, a paramedic. A paramedic can call time of death. Depends on the county. Okay. So I'm going to have to look and see if in Norfolk County. That's good to know. So yeah, I found from I went back and watched his original him testifying in the first yeah, he's one of the people who, Barb, he's one of the people who were at both scenes. So that's why I wanted to make sure I showed some of him testifying. I'm going to show a lot more of him testifying than I am Nick Garino, because they're piecemealing Nick Garino. You know what? Let me do Nick Garino first instead of Whitley. Let me do Nick Garino first, and then I'll go back to Whitley. Just because if we start running out of time, I want to make sure that I get Nick Garino in. So let me go back. I want to do Nick Garino first. Let me go back to my notes. that's the wrong one. Sorry, guys. They're not marked of which one's which. So now I know this one is the other one. Oh, it was me on the screen. I am sorry, guys. Let me replay that. Sorry about that. You just stand me looking like a fool. Just give me 1 second. Okay, let's try this again. Why did that jump to that? Oh. Before I get into showing this, Nicorino did the extraction on, almost every phone in Karen's case. He also did, obviously, we know Matthew Farwell's extraction, and there were 32,000 plus messages that he missed in Sandra's case from Matthew Farwell's phone. And one question that's never been answered, and the FBI didn't say which way it was. I wanted to know if Matthew Farwell deleted the messages or factory reset his phone. If he factory reset his phone, there wouldn't be any messages. There wouldn't be anything left on his phone. But if he just deleted the messages, that's what Celebrate is for. They should have been able to find those messages. So I'd like that to be answered. Obviously, we probably won't get that answer till there is a trial. But that's something I would like to know. And, for them, but they also kind of, they made it that they just kind of put that out there like, oh, we couldn't find anything. So, but they had those messages. On one hand, Nick Garino's almost a red herring when it comes to Sandra's case, because they had the messages. They had them from her computer. But it's very important, he's also, on the other hand, he's not, because it's very important that they miss these messages. And if it was just deleting the messages, they should have been able to retrieve them. So, I'm not sure what you must have been talking to somebody in the I must have missed what you said. Sorry, Mizzy, for talking too much. Oh, no, you're not talking too much. That's what we're all here for, to talk, you know? So let me get back to this, and let me make that full screen. And let's play.
Did you receive any specialized training at the Massachusetts State Police after the academy?
Once I got into the district attorney's office, yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about what type of specialized training you received when you were assigned to the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office?
Yes. So I was hired by the district attorney's office. I do cell phone and computer forensics, as well as I'm a sexual assault investigator. I had prior sexual assault investigator school done, and I went for digital forensics classes as part of my daily duties.
In order to work with cell phone forensics, did you have any particular background in it at that point?
I had taken some classes when I was at North PD, but I didn't have any of the Cellbrite or Axiom classes that I do now.
We'll talk about those in a minute so you can give a little more explanation.
So, Mr. Nicholas Garino, you know, that should make everyone in this chat sick. That the two kind of cases that he handles are sexual assault cases and, you know, phone extractions and you know, digital extractions. Because if you worked sexual assault cases, you would know what Sandra has been through from, you know, from the age of 15. And I'm just talking about the sexual assault portion of her case. You know, you would know what she's been through. And for you to, Mr. Nicholas Garino, or I like to call you Tricky Nicky, you know, you sit there and with a straight face testifying against Karen, saying that you handle sexual assault cases. But I find it very disgusting that that is your specialty when it comes to cases. And it angers me. Like when he said that, it angers me even more than even just knowing that he missed these messages. Like that, maybe it's because I know that the messages were on her computer, so we know that the messages are there. But knowing the fact that he was dealing with a young woman who was groomed and sexual assaulted from the age of 15 till the day she died, and was in this sick, twisted relationship with Matthew Farrell. And I hate to even use the word relationship, but technically that's what it was. No matter how gross and vile it was, you know, and you, instead of standing up for this victim, you helped cover up her murder. You were part of the cover up of her murder. And you make me sick, Nicholas Garino. You make me sick. Okay, let's go to 1424.
Find what you're looking for. Once you find something, you would have to corroborate it with other evidence or data to make sure what you're looking at is exactly what you're looking for.
Have you been involved in the download, extraction, and analyzing data on phones as your role with the Massachusetts State Police?
Yes, that's my primary role in the DA's office currently.
And how many years have you been in that role?
Since November of 2019, so 5 years now.
Have you worked on a number of different cases that involve?
And he can't add. it ends up being like 5.5, 4.5 years. I mean, 5.5 years, sorry, but it should have been 6, but, because it is 220. But, but that's not the part
Forensic data.
So his primary role in the Norfolk DA's office is to analyze phones and extract the data. Then why the fuck, Mr. Trooper Nicholas Garino, couldn't you do this on Matthew Farwell's phone? Why weren't you able to do your primary job that you do at the Norfolk DA's office? Why couldn't you find these? Exactly, Barb. He's been doing this since 2019. So he wasn't inept. He knew what he was doing. He knows he's part of the cover up. And the thing is, if he felt like he was being pressured by Michael Morrissey and everything, he could have reported to the FBI that this was going on. He could have been a whistleblower. Oh, sorry, wrong person. I agree. The feds aren't done yet. They are still investigating this case. They're trying to say that the John O'Keefe portion is done. I don't believe it is. I don't believe it is. And I can 100% say they are still investigating Sandra. So I find it funny that they would still be investigating Sandra's case when they've already brought charges and they're not investigating Officer O'Keefe's case, especially since they hired ARCA and they said that the car didn't hit John O'Keefe and John O'Keefe wasn't hit by a car. So that would mean that they know Karen Reed is innocent. So why would they say that there are no charges pending? Or why would they say that the case, they closed the case? Because that doesn't make any sense. The math isn't mathing. I can't stand Nicholas Garino. Polly Pocket says this. He is, whoops. Oh, sorry, it moved on me and I'm like confused. He is self-impressed Dick. Garino picks and chooses which cases he wants to pursue. Well, I don't think he can pick and choose what cases he wants to pursue, but I think he picks and chooses which cases he's going to be a good cop on. All these other cases, like I'm sure he was part of the Brian Walsh case, so I'm sure he was good on that case. But makes you wonder why he was bad on these two cases. Because the alternative suspects in both cases, were cops. The alternative suspect in Sandra's murder was Matthew Farwell, a cop. The third-party culprits that the defense is alleging that did this are Brian Albert and Brian Higgins. And only because the judge said they can't, they're not saying, oh my goodness, his name just went out of my head. The Albert kid. Colin, as the prosecutor in Aiden's case likes to call him Colin. I've been saying this, Polly Pocket, that this is a RICO case. I've been saying this forever, that this is a RICO case. From those letters that we saw from Morrissey and how panicked he seemed when he found out about the letters that he was saying. Yeah, I've been saying it's a RICO case, and Morrissey's the head of that pyramid, although that pyramid wouldn't be very structurally sound if he was at the top. And I'm fat, so I can make a fat joke. Yep, he was. As Allie would say. Yeah. So, yeah, Nicholas Greeno, whatever the fuck your name is, you are an asshole, and you don't know how to do your job. Okay, let's skip to part 2. So let me go to, and what I'm streaming the testifying on is a channel called Trial Channel. I recommend you go subscribe to it. If you ever miss a day of hearings, it's the best place to go watch it on. If you don't want, or if you just want to wait and not watch it on somebody else's channel, and you just want to watch it without anybody talking or anything like that. I know some streamers, like I like to watch it on Melanie Little's channel, and she chimes in and talks about the law and puts forth commentary, and I like it because we get to hear some of the legal reasons why things should be done in a certain way, why it's wrong, what what Aunt Bev is saying, and those things. But if you don't have the time to watch the whole day's worth, they cut out all the commercials. I'm not that they're a commercial, sorry. They all cut out all the sidebars, and even sometimes when somebody is looking at papers, the little, like when they're showing, like when the defense has to show the prosecution what papers they're going to present, they cut that little section out. So they whittle down that whole person testifying, and it's great. So let's see. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Nicholas Guarino, Guarino.
Thank you.
Sir, you mentioned yesterday that you downloaded a number of phones, or you were involved in the process of downloading a number of phones.
That's correct.
You explained to us that after you have the data analyzed, you can pinpoint certain items that you may want to put in a document.
Yeah, so the extractions into a program of our choosing, Cellbrite is the most commonly used, and then we can take call logs or text messages, any information that the investigator is looking for.
So, oh crap, am I showing myself? So what you're saying is you can pinpoint stuff. You can find stuff. You can locate stuff. Well, why couldn't you locate Jen McCabe's Google search at 227? Why couldn't you locate Matthew Farwell's text messages? Richard Green could find Jen's deleted message. Why couldn't you? Because you didn't want to. You found it, but you said you didn't. I fully believe that. Okay, 14.
May we begin, Your Honor?
Please.
Could you first read the text messages from that morning to the jury?
Yes. Apologize if I misspell things or state things. Start time. All right. It's a little different than the format I had before. All right. This is from Karen Reed to John O'Keefe. You have really hurt me this time. This was sent at 9:49:20 a.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. I'm sorry, this has been an issue with me for 8 years. It physically hurts me to see everyone else in their life do things for them, and I'm forced to always be the bad guy. This was sent at 10:02:56 a.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm not the same as everyone else. Most of the time I try to do what is healthy/smart for them. More importantly, I try to support you in what you need. You just lashed out at me and said terrible things. I don't know how you've gotten to this point with me when I'm just trying my hardest. You made your point and continue to beat me down. I have a lot going on too. Physically, I am falling apart and trying to get answers and help. 10:09:49 a.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I'm just your girlfriend. I am not a perfect parent. I'm trying very hard and sometimes treat them nothing like I used to. 10:46 a.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. I know. I'm sorry for lashing out. I'm just hurting and struggle daily with them. Always feel like I'm failing at this parenting thing. I wasn't built for this. 10:12 a.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. Kaylee isn't perfect, but everything wonderful about her is because of you. 12:21:36 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, an emoji is sent at 12:21:59 on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, it's true. I know she's her mother's daughter, but she wouldn't be so bright and successful if she lived with anyone else. 12:22:51 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, wow, Kristen just sent 2 back-to-back messages to not lose your faith in the kids. 12:31:28 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or in yourself, at 12:31:41 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, there's 2 emojis sent at 12:32:06 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, no, and there's 2 emojis. Life can pick you up sometimes. Please be happy with them and put away your frustrations for the rest of the day. And be so proud of yourself, JJ. That's 12:33:35 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, that's what bothers me more than anything. Should have sent Peg's or Sarah's W-2s. We're all equal guardians. 1:18:21 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, maybe you can call someone. 1:21:55 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, like who? 1:46:42 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, what time are you coming here? 1:47:38 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, it's another emoji sent, 2:05:30 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't know what time, feel kind of out of it, just trying to clear my head, 2:06:07 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, he writes, okay, 2:06:25 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, text me when you guys settle in later, 2:06:44 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, sure, 2:06:58 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to, oh, no, it's cut off here, sir.
Yeah. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay. The reason why I wanted you guys to see these, I noticed something. I mean, I'm sure everybody noticed that the reason that they weren't shown, that, you know, they didn't put these ones up on the screen. But I think I know why. Because Brennan didn't want the jury to see that they were emojis that might have been like hearts or like, loving, lovingly type of emojis being sent, because later on the emojis are John rolling his eyes, and there's one time I think Karen rolls her eyes back at him, and I think he didn't want because there's no reason why these weren't put on the slides too. There's no reason. It makes no sense. It's part of the last, that day. Why weren't these slides put on the screen? It makes no sense. And I think that's why. I think he didn't want the jury to see that they sent each other hearts, and, Karen was lifting him up. She was saying, I don't like how it went down today. You hurt me, but, I'm different from everybody. I'm your partner. We're in this together. And, he was down on himself because he wasn't a parent from when they weren't his children. They were his sister's children. So, and he's a single guy. So, he never had kids. So he didn't know how to be a father. And he was kind of thrust into it when his sister's husband passed away so quickly after his sister passed away. Like you said, Barb, spin, spin, spin. They didn't want, I hope that the defense puts those up on the screen. I hope they do, so they can see that it wasn't just this ugliness. Yes, I'm not going to play this part because I want to get on to Whitley. Obviously Garino's going to take the stand more again later on, so I want to play more of his as they trickle him out, which I think is BS. I hope when the defense crosses him, they reiterate and bring it back and show, have him go through what he does again. Not everything, just a quick synopsis of what he does at the DA's office, and then puts these text messages up again. And so they can show that it wasn't all bad. I guarantee you guys that those emojis are, the kind with, hearts, or like the smile with the hearts around it. I post that one a lot, those kind of emojis that they didn't want the jury to see. Yeah, every relationship, I agree, Barb. Every relationship has its ups and downs, and people fight. That's what being in a relationship, you have good times, you have bad times, and like their day was a roller coaster. It started off with a big fight, and she went home, and it ended up with him saying, the last part of their text messages, he's begging her to come. He's begging her to be there, be snowed in with them. And so sorry. But Barb, she spoiled kids. She was too nice, therefore she must have killed John. Yeah. I think it was just, I think Karen, Karen's like John. She didn't have children. She was basically an instant mom, and she was getting criticized for what she would do. And he didn't like her. No, I know you were joking. It was, but it's, and you could see throughout the day that it was why they would fight was she didn't want to go there because she wanted to distance herself from the children, because that seemed to be what they fought about the most. That is what they fought most about in although they want to try to make it about Karen flipping out about there might have been a kiss with that one of the Sullivan girls, I think their fights were more about, they fought about that. They did argue about that because she thought he kissed her. But it was more of what he pulled on New Year's. He took off on New Year's, got drunk, and she was sitting in the room celebrating New Year's Eve with the kids. And that's not fair to her. So it was that. So it ended. So her saying that, it makes sense that their fighting seems to be based around the kids. And it wasn't because Karen didn't Karen didn't care about those kids and Karen didn't love those kids, because it sounds like she did. Yes, the way of her showing her love is to give them things and made sure they had stuff, because they didn't have a mom to do these things with to do with them. They didn't have a mom to take them school clothes shopping, or, to take them to, if there was a dance, mom, can I get a new skirt for the dance? They didn't have a mom anymore. And so Karen was that de facto mom. So that doesn't, and just because somebody was fighting doesn't mean she murdered him. We saw how lovey-dovey they were that night. We saw how they were that night. What was it? Karina Kilokothakisis? I'm probably butchering her last name. She even said to her husband, why can't you be like that? Like John and Karen. She was like a little jealous. She was like, why can't you be like them in the first trial? I'm sure she'll say the same thing again in this trial. Just because people fight does not mean, they're going to murder somebody. And as we said, John and Karen weren't married. The kids weren't between them two. They could have broken up. She didn't need to murder him, to end it. It's not like it was, Karen was the executor. I mean, it wasn't not the executor, wasn't going to be getting all his money in his will, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like, they had all these houses between them and property, and it wasn't like that. So she had nothing to gain from killing him. She could have just broke up with him. And, it pisses me off seeing the Norfolk DA's office railroad a woman when the evidence is all right in front of us. Yeah, it's not perfect evidence. Yeah, there's some things we don't like. There's text messages we don't like. Later on, we'll hear about the phone call she was, making to him, how they escalated, but that doesn't mean she murdered him. That doesn't mean she hit him with her car. And I agree what people have said, that if you're a murderer, most people, when they commit these murders, they'll call their boyfriend or husband, or, on the other side, their wife or spouse, girlfriend, and say, oh, sweetie, I'm trying to get in touch with you because I wanted to see if, you needed anything at the store, and, I'll be coming home at 4. So just give me a call back and let me know. They'll leave lovey-dovey messages to try to cover it up. Not Karen. She went the totally opposite way. It was like yelling at him in her voicemails. Yeah, they're not pretty. Her voicemails aren't pretty to John. But you don't leave those kind of voicemails when you just murder them. That's not what you do. Most people try to cover it up. It's just like absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. This case, you know, in I know, and Barb knows from dealing with the Norfolk DA's office, because we're fighting the same people as we've been fighting for justice for Sandra. We know how shady as fuck that office is. And we know how fucking disgusting their troopers are. Covering up murders of young women who were abused. We know how disgusting they are from dealing with this bullshit. You know? That's why I thanked Karen for fighting. Because her fighting made it easier for us to fight for Sandra. Because people finally were like, wow, there's these two cases that are very similar. Yeah, their deaths aren't similar, but the investigations are. The investigations into these two deaths are very similar. Sorry. Okay, let me get to Whitley. Give me a second. Let me bring it up again. Is there more than one? Oh, wait, hold on.
Firefighter.
Oh, Whitley. As I said, Whitley was the paramedic that was called to the scene for Sandra. And some of my observations that I noticed about him testifying, he's very twitchy. I have some suspicion. Is this? Hold on. I got to make sure this wasn't last year. This was just a couple days ago. Okay. He's very twitchy. He does a lot of he's fidgeting.
They're not my kids.
Whoops.
And then
he squirms in his seat, and I suspect he is either, he may have ADHD. I could be wrong. I'm not trying to diagnose him, but that could be why he is very fidgety. I have ADHD, and I get very fidgety when I have to sit still. You know, I shift in my chair. So I don't fidget as much as I used to. You know, I have OCD too, and I'm always wiping my hands, but so I don't fidget as much. I hold a wipe in my hand, and it helps to kind of settle my ADHD down, so I'm not like, you know, because if you look at my old videos, I was bad. Like my interview of Brandon Embry's mom, it's like, what is wrong with this girl? Because I was just like all over the place, and I'm like, you know, so I'm like everywhere. And so I suspect that possibly could be what it is. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to actually make me go down smaller, but I'm wondering, I might have to look again, because it doesn't, I don't know. I'm going to play this, but I have a feeling I'll check my phone while I have that up, because if it kind of seems like it might be, because yeah, he was there twice. Okay, I think this is the wrong one. Give me one more second, guys. Sorry, apologize. That's what I thought. Okay, let me try this way.
So it's now time for the opening statements.
Who's in the back of the
I'm so confused. Give me one second. I apologize, guys. Okay. Yes, this is right. I'm confused myself because I went back and rewatched the other one. So okay. So it was 10:56. Start from here.
It's okay. It looks like you have a very strong support system. And then Miss Reed said, "Do you know Carrie Roberts?" And she had been crying. And she picked her head up and said, "Do you know Carrie Roberts?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, I do." And she said, "Anybody who knows Carrie Roberts wouldn't say that about her." And I said, "Well, she did come to out at early in the morning to look for your husband in a blizzard." And she just rolled her eyes and put her head back down. And I thought it was just bizarre.
objection, move the stand.
I'll strike that last sentence.
In the original, he used another word. In the original video, he used a different word besides bizarre. I just, looking back on, what we know of Carrie Roberts now, after knowing that she's capable of getting on the stand and lying to the grand jury. Yes, it was snarky. Yeah, you're right. It was snarky. And in the first one, he didn't say it more, but the first time I heard him testify, I felt like he knew Carrie Roberts better than he's saying. But he didn't say he knew her more in that one, but it just felt like it. It didn't quite as much here. But, I don't know. Yeah, I agree, Barb. It's hard to keep up with these creeps. Yes, he was the one who pronounced her dead. The one thing I find weird about it, though, in last year's trial, one of the paramedics said that they always have to go in twos. So I find it weird that he was the only paramedic that went. And I think some of you said you were paramedics. So if somebody could answer that question, and actually Whitley even says, I believe in this testimony, or maybe it was last year's testimony about that. So yeah, he's yeah, there's a lot of coaching going on. I agree with that. But also these witnesses have already testified. But does everybody else feel? I feel so disjointed watching this trial. Granted, I mean, like Lally was annoying with his what if anythings and like how monotone he is. But there was a little rhyme to reason. Like there is no, like the jury has to be like, what the fuck is going on? He goes back and forth all over the place. And that's a tactic that defense lawyers use sometimes, you know, especially in their questioning. They'll go back, they'll ping pong around to keep the person on their toes. But this is like, it's there's no flow to this trial. And I couldn't imagine being a juror on this case, sitting there being like, this woman could be up for life in prison, and this is bouncing around like it's so disjointed. Oh, I don't know. So anyway, that was that part that I don't know what my point was with playing that part. I'm sorry, I'm losing my mind at this point. 13.
Go and ask the doctor if she had to get into a Johnny. She came back. She said yes. She's a patient. She has to do all the normal stuff. We really didn't feel comfortable actually leaving the general area. I don't know if it was just shift change or what, but security wasn't there. And with her demeanor, we just didn't feel comfortable leaving the nurse by herself with Miss Reed.
You said that there was some difficult times. Was there some difficulty about the defendant accepting wearing a Johnny?
Yes, she was refusing to.
Oh, hold on, guys. One thing I realized when I went back and watched the original, he says that we didn't feel like it was this woman, like when him and his partner show up, they didn't feel like it was a sectioning case. They just excuse me. He felt it was just somebody in normal grief. And even though she was saying something like that she wanted to kill herself, he said a lot of people say that when in these situations, and he didn't feel like that it fit the bill of someone to be sectioned. And that's when he talked to the police, and that's when he said, "Oh, you got more information." He said, "Yeah." Well, there really wasn't more information. He already had the statement that she was making, statements saying that if he dies, if John dies, I want to die. So I found that interesting when I went back.
To get into the Johnny, and the nurse kept saying, "Well, you got to get into this Johnny." The nurse did try to work with her, and you know, asked the doc if.
I'll allow that.
And so the ER doc, the ER tech had to come back and say yes, she has to get into the Johnny. And at that point, she did. She you know, seemed to have calmed down and was getting into the Johnny. Security personnel had shown up, and we felt comfortable being able to kind of leave the nurse and the tech on their own.
Before.
See, now with that, I probably would have been locked up, because I would have been like, my boyfriend's fucking here. I'm not staying here. I'm not getting in a fucking Johnny. They're acting like, you know, there isn't a reason why she's doesn't want to get into a Johnny. She doesn't want to deal with them. She wants to find out what the hell is going on with John. And it's not a matter of being like unreasonable and being difficult. She only cares about finding out what is happening with John. She wants to know if John is alive or dead. So to sit there and act like, oh, she's being so difficult. She doesn't care about putting, you know what? You're telling her to put on a Johnny. Fuck the Johnny. Which is kind of funny to say Johnny, that's what they called him. You know, fuck that. I want to know how John is. That's all I want to know. It's like, I wouldn't even sit here and tell you how I would have behaved. I probably would have been arrested, because that's how I would have behaved. I would have been like 10 times worse. No, you know, yeah, that's how I know it's getting to the point where it's coming to a close. When I start having coughing fits, but yeah, for him to act like how she's acting is come on, dude. She just witnessed her boyfriend on the lawn of another Boston cop. And all she wants to know is if he's alive or dead. And her getting into a Johnny and doing peeing in a cup are the last things on her mind. Anybody would have been acting like that. I would have told them repeatedly, go fuck yourself. I'm not putting it on till you fucking find out how my boyfriend is. You know, it's I'm sorry for him to act like, oh, I was afraid. I was afraid to leave the nurse and the tech with her. Get the fuck out of here, you lying piece of shit. Get out of here. 26-23.
And I said, matter of fact, I do. And she said, anybody?
When you mentioned
She had been crying in her hands. And I said, you know, it looks like you have a very strong support system. And she picked up her head. She had her face in her hands. She picked up her head out of her hands, looked at me, and said, do you know Carrie Roberts? And I said, matter of fact, I do. And she said, anybody who knows Carrie Roberts wouldn't say that about her.
Okay.
So you notice how he got way more dramatic than he was when Brennan was asking these questions? Like, so way more dramatic. Hi, Danny. Thanks for joining us. How you doing tonight? Thank you. I'm pretty good, although I'm having coughing fits, but that's okay. We'll cough right through this garbage testimony.
And you've previously described that in testimony last year as her being snarky was the term you used, correct?
Correct.
But you were first interviewed by the police on February 8th of 2022, correct?
If that's what the report says, yes.
About 10 days after this?
About that.
And the events of January 29th were fresh in your mind on February 8th of 2022, correct?
As fresh as they are today.
Okay, so you do not allow that your memory was better on February 8th of 2022 regarding January 29th of 2022. It wasn't better on February 8th than it is today, is your testimony.
I would feel it's just as good.
Okay. Your memory does not get better over time, correct?
For this case, it seemed to stick out to me.
Okay, so are you testifying that your memory gets better over time?
No, but
that would be crazy, wouldn't it?
Correct.
In that February.
Yeah, it would be crazy. It would absolutely be crazy. Like, watch further as this goes on. He starts fidgeting more. He starts touching his face more. He keeps scratching the side of his head. It's it's funny to watch. Okay, let me get back to it. Let me get to the next one. 20. You know what, I'll just let it play from here because the next one is at
2022 interview. You were asked about Kerry Roberts, right?
I'm sorry, what day?
February 8th of 2022. Okay. You were asked about Kerry Roberts, right?
I do not recall if I was or was not.
You told the police that you knew Kerry Roberts from your neighborhood, correct?
Okay, yes.
And you've testified today that she just lived 200 yards away from you, right around the corner, right?
About that.
And you told police that you had seen Kerry Roberts on scene at 34th Fairview when you got there, correct?
Correct.
You also told police that Karen Reed had told you about making statements about her wanting to die, correct?
Correct.
But on February 8th of 2022, just 10 days after these events, you never mentioned to the police during that interview that Karen was snarky in any way, correct?
I don't know if I did or I didn't. I don't know if it would be in their report.
If you saw that report, would it refresh your memory as to whether or not you mentioned snarkiness?
I don't think I mentioned snarkiness that day. No.
Okay. All right. Well, that answers my question.
Oh, you didn't. You didn't call her snarky that day. I mean, technically, that means you lied. I mean, why, as a paramedic, you know, him and the first guy, Nuttall, why are you guys turning yourselves into pretzels? Just go up there and fucking tell the truth. Why are you lying? Why are you embellishing? Why are you trying to make things seem better than they are? Now, is that something the prosecution put a bug in your ear? Or are you just trying to be a hero and trying to help convict Karen? Because telling the truth is important. You know, we've only had 2 firefighter/paramedics come up. I don't know if they're going to, who else they're going to call. Oh, I'm sorry. There's been 3. I don't know who else they're going to call. I assume at least Flamati, I think it is. They're going to call him because he plays a big part in it. But why are the one guy who worked with this idiot, he was the only one who went up there, said what happened, and then he got off the stand. You know, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous. And, you know, Canton has a problem, not just with their police, their fire department. I don't know if because they know a lot of the police officers and they're like, you know, what they're pissed because, you know, the defense is making Canton look bad. So they're going to try to embellish and, you know, put that bad woman, Karen Reed, away. They're going to help put her away. No, that's not how testifying works. You get up there and you tell what happened and you tell the truth. Okay, 36.
With you in the ambulance, it's fair to say she was still upset and crying, correct?
At times.
Okay. You had just testified that you said at times she was upset and crying when she got in the ambulance, correct?
Correct.
You testified on April 21st of 2022 before the grand jury, did you not?
I did.
And that was 3 months after the events that you're testifying about today?
Roughly.
And your memory back then was fresh, was it not?
Yes.
And you were asked the question, once she was in the back of the ambulance and she agreed voluntarily to go to the hospital, did she appear to calm down at that point? Do you remember that question?
I do.
Look at that.
And your answer was, I mean, she wasn't arguing against us at that point. I mean, once she, agreed to come with us voluntarily, I mean, she was still upset, crying, and talking on the phone. Do you remember that answer?
I do.
All right. You didn't mention in that answer that it was only at times that she was crying and upset, correct?
No.
Okay. The whole time, from beginning to end, Ms. Reed was constantly worried about John, was she not?
Yeah.
Sustained.
You recall that she was on the phone at one point speaking to someone that she called Papa, correct?
Correct.
Did you later learn that Papa was John O'Keefe Sr.?
I am just learning that just now.
All right. And in any case, you heard her say to Papa, is he dead? He's dead, isn't he?
Sustained.
You could hear on the other end of the line that Papa was saying something to her, correct?
The objection sustained.
May I approach?
The witness or me?
Sidebar.
Okay.
That part. Bev, of course he wants to talk to you. You're impeding him being able to question his witness. Come on. Come on, Bev. It's ridiculous. Like, of course he wants to talk to you. You're impeding his questioning. He wants to get these questions answered. He feels he needs these questions to be answered for his client. Of course he wants to talk to you. Jesus. I want to go to this question. Excuse me. They are all on the take, bought and paid for by the McAlberts. See, I don't agree with that. I get what you're saying, but I don't agree with that. I just think it's that he grew up in Canton. He's a Canton guy, so he knows these people. He knows Carrie Roberts. He may not know her very, very well, but he knows Carrie. He doesn't know Karen. They're all from Canton. They're all, the Alberts, the McAlberts walk on water over there. So I don't think they had to be bought and paid for. They just have to be, they're just well known in the town. Chris is on the select board. Sometimes you don't even have to pay people to go along with you. You just have to show that your gusto and your that you are the shit. Jen was the voted most, I can't remember if it was most beautiful or most pretty. Okay, I get what you're saying. Throughout, once Jen testifies, I'll probably say this again. So, but Jen was voted in, what was it, 1994, if I remember correctly. Most beautiful or most pretty in her class, and she's used to being the alpha chick. She's used to being the top of the pyramid. What sometimes people say are the mean girls, the girls that who think their shit don't stink. They walk around campus with their head up high, like they are looking down on other people, and that's who that that's funny. I wonder if she got that fixed. We'll see. I guess we wait till she takes the stand. You know, she's used to being able to, and actually I probably should meant to say this during Carrie's testimony. You know, she's used to being able to manipulate people, get people to do what they want just by being her and showing that she is queen shit of Canton. And in a way, Karen was almost a threat to that, because she probably didn't give a shit about Jen. Because she wasn't from Canton, so it didn't mean shit to her that, you know, Jen was voted the most whatever she was in high school, because Canton is like being in high school, and the Alberts are the popular crowd. People want to be them or be like them. They want to be friends with them and be like them. So that's why one of the reasons why they had the gravitas to go do what they did.
Mr. Whitley, yesterday you testified that when Karen Reed was brought to the hospital, she didn't want to get into a hospital Johnny and she didn't want to give a urine sample. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
It was clear to you that her reluctance to cooperate at that time was because she very much wanted to check on John's progress and status at the hospital, correct?
Before we go any further, I just read some of my notes that I put. Bev, she said he couldn't there was an objection, and that's when they went to sidebar. I said, when David again was asking that question, this guy, it's like he was in a tiny box. We all know that ambulances aren't that big, so you're in a tiny box with Karen this whole time, and she's on the phone. He could hear the whole conversation. He could hear everything that's being said. And he most likely could have heard Papa on the phone too. Because when you're in a small confined area, you can sometimes hear the other person speaking on the phone. So with the tight quarters, with the quarters being so tight, he heard everything. And he 100% at least heard Karen's side. But that's why he was Brennan objected.
No, I don't believe that to be the case.
Well, you testified before the grand jury regarding this matter 3 years ago, didn't you?
I don't believe I said that she was the.
I didn't ask you that question. You testified before the grand jury 3 years ago, didn't you?
I testified before the grand jury 3 years ago.
You were under oath then, as you're under oath today, correct?
Correct.
You swore to tell the truth.
I am telling the truth.
You swore to tell the truth in 2022 before the grand jury, did you not?
I did.
That was less than 3 months after you brought Karen Reed to the hospital, didn't you?
Yeah.
And your memory of what happened at the hospital was very good in April of 2022, right?
As good as today?
Your memory in April of 2022 was very good, wasn't it?
It was very good as it is today.
Okay, so you want to add the as it is today, despite the fact that you weren't asked that question. Is that right?
Objection.
Sustained.
All right. When questioned by Mr. Lally at the grand jury, you were asked.
Move on to another section.
Giving a urine sample. You testified under oath that you believed that she didn't want to give a urine sample, correct?
Correct.
Yesterday, 3 years later, you testified with certainty that she didn't want to give them, right?
Yeah, she was giving them a hard time about having to give a urine sample.
Right. No, I'm asking you about your testimony yesterday in contrast to the grand jury, sir.
Okay.
To the extent that I ask yes or no question, I'd like yes or no answers.
So
okay?
no instructions to the witness, Ms.
Your
Giannetti.
Honor,
Ask
may the
a
witness be
question.
instructed to answer the question yes or no if it calls for a yes or no question.
Answer the question that's asked of you. Okay.
Okay.
So go
That's the
ahead.
thing. He's supposed to answer the question that's asked. He's not supposed to add embellishments onto there. And this guy loves to embellish. He loves hearing the sound of his own voice. So.
And ask a question.
You testified yesterday that she didn't want to give a urine sample without saying it was your belief that she didn't want to give one, correct?
Correct.
And in any case, were you aware that when she was asked to give a urine sample, that Ms. Reed had gotten her period and did not have a tampon?
I was aware she was on her period, yes.
You're also aware that when somebody is brought to the hospital for a Section 12, they have no privacy. Isn't that right?
They have medical privacy. Either the tech or the nurse would be with the patient at all times.
Okay. With them at all times, observing them at all times, correct?
So they wouldn't be, she wasn't in like a hallway open to the public.
Understood, sir. But she also, when I said privacy, what I was asking is, she was not allowed to go to the bathroom alone to give a urine sample, correct?
She was a psychiatric patient.
Right. So she.
Okay. The last thing I'm going to play is, I got to bring it up, is.
So it's now time for the opening statements.
Let me get to it. Let me bring that. Let me do this. I'm going to play what I actually mentioned to you guys so you guys can hear him talk about it. I just got to bring it up. When he mentions the part about it being normal grief. Whoops. Okay. Where is he? Okay.
On scene. So where is that initial conversation?
The initial conversation, she was very upset. She kept saying, so we had a Section 12 written, and that was to take her to the hospital because she made threats against her life, saying, I don't want to live anymore. If my husband dies, I don't want to be alive anymore. And myself and Jason and Lieutenant Woodbury were kind of like, well, that's seemingly more in the lines of normal grieving process after something traumatic happens to a loved one, whether they're going to die or not. We kind of didn't feel like it kind of led to that level of a Section 12 to have her transported to the hospital. So at that point, I exited the ambulance and I went to speak with Officer Saraf, and I said, this kind of doesn't, if we want her to be at the hospital, get a full eval, we're going to need more than just if my husband dies, I want to die, because that seems just like normal grieving things to say. And so I went back to the ambulance. He went, I don't know where he went. I don't know whether it was cruiser or what, but he came back, notified me that her
Sustained.
And from that conversation, did you receive more information or more clarity as to statements that Ms. Reed had made?
Yes, Officer Saraf had said that.
Objection.
So not what he said, sir. So
We
You
were
are
informed
unneeded.
that.
Objection.
I'm not sure.
so you can't testify to what somebody else told you. You can when
All right, that's about it. I just wanted to play that part so it can, you guys could see that that's their initial contact with Karen. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Their initial contact with Karen, he didn't think she sounded like a candidate to be sectioned. So, and I get that her parents were worried that she was going to do something stupid, but his initial assessment of talking to her that she didn't feel like that. He didn't feel like that she needed to be sectioned. Let me see. That's something I want to. No, I'm not saying that everybody likes them. I don't think everybody likes them. As a matter of fact, we know not everybody likes them. But there's a to be loved and feared sometimes ends up in the same spot. Think about like the mean girls in high school or the popular girls in high school. People sometimes love them and loathe them, but some of their quasi adoration is fear. They fear their popularity. They fear how much they can command people around them and manipulate people around them. And we know that Jen is a master manipulator. That's what I mean by I didn't mean that they were popular and people liked them, but you could be popular and hated too, but you're still reign over, I'm giving the analogy of like school, think of some of the most popular kids. A lot of them were prissy, stuck up bitches or assholes, the asshole jock. Some of them were nice. Some of them, didn't take it all like, thought that they were clean shit. Jen is not that person. She thinks she runs, she thinks she's the head bitch in that place. The head HIBC, head bitch in the place. HIBC, head. Anyway, whatever I was trying to say. So yeah, those are the people who are obviously Carrie Roberts isn't part of Sandra's case, but everyone else is part of the case. Daniel Whitley, he's the paramedic that was called to the scene. And we all know Nick Garino's part in Sandra's case. He's the one who did the digital download of Matthew Farwell's phone, and he could not find the text messages, the 32,000 plus text messages between Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore. So I'm going to keep doing this because I feel it's important. People say these cases aren't connected. And yes, they are two very different cases, but they have a lot of connective tissue between the two cases. There's a lot of law enforcement that are in both cases. And then even people like Daniel Whitley, he's not law enforcement, but he is part of both cases. So I want to make sure that I'm, coming at the Karen Reed trial in that way. So I'm still, playing Karen's case and talking about Karen's case, but talking about, and also still, stay in my lane and talk about the people who were in Sandra's case and witnesses that are that are going to be testifying. They're going to have to testify. That man is going to have to get up in front of a federal court and testify, in that case. And, he's not going to have a friendly judge, and you would imagine that Matthew Farwell's lawyer is going to come at him if he starts bumbling and fumbling and stumbling like a fool. Nick Garino, they're going to come at him. They're going to gladly come after him, saying, wait a minute, you couldn't find any of these messages, so they weren't on his phone, so they're going to come after him. So these are, and they're going to be called in the civil case also. So they're going to have to testify in 2 different cases in Sandra's case, and hopefully there'll be more out there when it comes to Sandra's, when it comes to the abuse. The fact that none of this was found on Matthew's phone, when there's tons of stuff in Sandra's messages that shows the abuse of Sandra Birchmore. So it's very important to show these 2. And this is also my way of being able to support Karen. For the longest time, I've been just like in the Sandra Birchmore lane talking about Sandra's case, and I haven't really done a lot on Karen's case. So this is a way for me to like talk about the 2 cases at the same time, and to keep showing that there is an issue in Norfolk County, and we all need to make sure we keep talking about it, because silence does not help getting this out to the public. Silence, when you're silent on issues like this, you're only helping the bad guys. So I want to bring one last thing up before we head up. Oh, that's give me 1 second. If my email allows me to, works with me. So, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming and spending some time with me tonight. It means a lot. I know there are a lot of other big creators who are doing shows right now. So it means the world that you guys are here, with little old me. Well, not really little, but, me doing this, because, the smaller creators, it's tough trying to go up against the bigger creators in this community, because, everybody wants to go watch their shows. And it's me that you're here to watch what I have to say. And it helps Sandra's case. So if you're not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Oh, thank you. No, I appreciate you. I appreciate you guys. It means the world to me, So again, I want to show, because it's in the same thing, show this. So let me go back in there. As I was saying, if you're not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe. It helps. Not only it lets you know when I'm going live, if you put on the alerts, but also you just help my channel to grow, and so I can help get Sandra's case out there more. And when I start bringing you guys, because there are other cases, Brandon Embry, I keep talking about Brandon Embry. And Brandon Embry's case means so much to me. And, it's another wild case. And, he's a Navy veteran. And I want to make sure that I bring his case to you guys too, because it means a lot to me. And we want to make sure that his case is getting out there. And you guys are going to be shocked with some of the stuff that comes up in Brandon's case. Again, we're doing a standout for Sandra Birchmore on May 17th at 1 to 4. at right across from the Stoughton town hall. Sorry, my brain isn't working. At the Stoughton town hall, and we are having a contest to see who makes the best homemade sign. So we're gonna, and there will be a prize, and I'm probably gonna get cupcakes. So it'll be fun. So come join us if you live in the area. If you don't, I might go live. I haven't decided. I have to make sure, if I do go live, I have to make sure that I absolutely have a moderator in the chat. With it being small, I can moderate. And Barb's in the chat. When Barb's in the chat too, she moderates too. So, but Barb and I would both be at this. So she wouldn't be able to moderate while I'm in the chat, while I'm on, doing a live. So it would be hard. It'll be hard for me to moderate from there. But yes, please subscribe. Because there's a lot more that I want to bring to you, I agree, Barb. There's way too many injustices out there. Eventually I'll try to do two shows a week. I don't know if I physically can handle doing 2 shows. But if one of my shows is going back, like if one of my shows is about Sandra and the other one is like, I'm talking like right now with doing the Karen Reed, because it's a lot of work. I spent the last 2 days watching the testimony and trying to figure out what clips I want to use. And then, so it was a lot of work. So if I show you cases that I already did, that's kind of easy, because I use I already have the video, and I already can play the video and just talk, stop the video and explain things over my own video. So going back through some of my cases is easy for me to do. So I wouldn't necessarily be scared to come to Massachusetts. It's just, honestly, Karen Reed's case and Sandra's case, let me bring myself fully on let me switch this for right now. Karen Reed's case and Sandra's case show a microcosm of corruption here in Massachusetts. And yes, there are a lot of aspects of Massachusetts that are corrupt, but there's a lot of, this happens in every state in the United States. There are other DAs who are just as bad as Michael Morrissey. I just think a lot of people are finally opening their eyes and realize that, these people who are in power, like Michael Morrissey, and, the select board members who are slowly starting to be taken out, the McAlberts, the police Chief Rafferty just resigned, or retired. She's leaving in, I believe, June. What people don't want to lose power is a powerful drug. It's intoxicating. And people don't think of it as compared to a drug. Once they have it, they don't want to get rid of it, and they need more of it. So it's like a drug. And unfortunately, this happens all over. I just think that Karen's case is highlighting and opening a lot of people's eyes whose eyes were closed to it before. And yes, I agree, Karen's case is definitely one, for the books, but so is Sandra's. And not every case is on the level of Karen's, where like from the from the cops to the firemen, it's really bad. It is really bad here too. But, yes. Like I was going to say, like, are you anywhere near Chicago? Like, look at the corruption there. I just think Karen's case is showing what can go wrong when people are beholden to other people, and when somebody in charge like Michael Morrissey don't do the right thing. They care about the people who are connected to them. Well, then you get it. You get it. If you're in the Chicago area, you get it. There's, like I said, it's not about power. It's about people's power. Like I said, power is a, when they say someone's on a power trip, it's because power is intoxicating. And once people are in power, they don't want to give it up. They feel like they have to, sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry. When people are in power, they don't want to let that power go. And, like, look at what just happened with the select board of Canton. There was a man who was in office for, I believe, over 30 years. And now he was unseated. And that is awesome for the town of Canton. And sometimes it's easier. I don't agree with it, but sometimes it's easier to say something as a suicide. But we don't want them to take the easy way out. We want them to do their job. We want them to solve murders. We want them to do what we've put them in office to do. We want them to do, in the case of the police, to do what we pay them to do. We want them to be everything that we thought they were. And I think a lot of people, Karen's case, and even Karen has said it. Obviously, she does not want to be going through what she's going through. But I've heard her say it a few times. She was the right person at the right time, where she had the money to help herself. She has a strong family with strong convictions, and who would support her and love her and have her back to get through anything. And she got the right lawyers. So Karen, by picking up that rock and showing what's underneath it, she's showing the world what has been going on for a very, very, what has been going on for a very long, long time. And, for people who look like me in Black and brown communities, this happens all the time. This has been going on for a long time. I was just reading something about wrongfully convicted. A lot of people who get their cases overturned and come off death row or just get their cases overturned over 20, 30, 40, 50 years. A lot of it is Black men. Because especially back then, it still goes on today, but especially back then, this type of stuff that is happening to Karen it happened all the time. It still happens, but it happened a lot back then. It happens in Black and brown communities and poor white communities. because they don't go after the rich. They go after usually the poor, unless there's something like what Brian Walsh did, those types of people. And that's why, poor white people and people of color need to band together, because we're the people who are, who are considered less than, are the ones who are filling the prisons, who are the ones being convicted of the same crimes that their counterpart is getting probation for, type deal things. So we need to take this justice system and flip it on its head, because it's not working for everybody. And Karen Reed's case is showing that. And she's showing that if they could do it to a pretty wealthy, I mean, she wasn't rich, but she was fairly wealthy. She had a good job. She had 2 good jobs. If they could do this to her, they could do it to anyone. And she's proving that. I'm heartbroken. Karen's going through this. I'm especially heartbroken that Sandra went through it and John went through what they went through. They were both murdered by people they trusted. I don't know if he necessarily trusted the Alberts, but he never would have thought that walking into that house, he would have been murdered, and Karen's case is showing that this happens, and we need to change our justice system. We need to make sure that, it works for everyone. And sadly, Karen's case has woken a lot of people up and kind of shook up their world, showing if this could happen to Karen, it could happen to anyone when you're not the ones in power. Oh yeah, Boston. Oh yeah, I mean, like, Boston's had a lot of corruption going back. I mean, like, look at what was going on with, Hank Brennan's guy, Whitey Bulger. I mean, he put a spotlight on corruption in Massachusetts, so it's the people like Morrissey who have clearly been, living off the backs of others and don't care about who the corruption craps on, as long as his people come out on top. He doesn't care. I mean, like, for him to not charge Matthew Farwell is like, is beyond the pale, and for him to be going after Karen Reed still, even after the FBI sent him the 2A report. Like, it's not normal for the feds to be investigating not just 1, but 2 cases. I think I said this last time. 2 cases. It's not normal. It is not normal at all. And it's not normal for a small town to have 2 high profile murder cases. Yeah, and the feds were the crooked ones, like you just said. We need to make sure that We keep speaking out. We keep using our voices because that's what the forefathers wanted us to do. That's why the First Amendment is first. We can never allow these people to take away our civil liberties. And yeah, we shouldn't hand them over. We shouldn't just allow them to, we shouldn't allow ourselves to hand it over to them. We should always speak out. We should always speak up. You know, a lot of people say to me, oh, you know, I respect you. And, you know, what you did was so amazing for Sandra. I'm just a loudmouth who decided something was wrong in Sandra's case, and I decided to speak. Anybody can do that. Yes, it can be scary. I've always been like this. I've always been somebody who spoke up. I've always spoke my mind, but it just takes one person, and it takes other people being willing to listen. So I'm glad you guys are willing to listen, and I'm glad you guys are speaking out about Karen and standing behind Karen, and you're also here standing behind Sandra, and you're standing up for John O'Keefe, because hopefully this trial brings out some more, and hopefully more proof is put out, and hopefully more people listen, and hopefully the feds are watching. I know they are. I know they are. All right, I'm done with my rant. My last thing I want to put up there is, I was saying, let me get back to it, so I can end. We have Sandra's standout coming on May 17th. It's a happy heavenly birthday standout. Please, if you're in the area, come join us, please, please, please. We need as many people as we can get. Sometimes it's hard keeping Sandra's name in the public eye, and we need to remind them who she is, and we need people to say her name. Because as we saw in the Norfolk County, they tried to bury her name. So I'm gonna have, let me see. We're all fighting for justice for these three people. Karen is the only one here that we can stand up for her while she's living. But these other two deserve us to stand up for them and make sure their names don't get lost. And that's why I've been fighting for Sandra, and that's why Barb has been fighting for her cousin. It's very important to speak out and spread their name and tell others. Bye, Barb. I'll talk to you later. Just need you guys to keep saying their names. And my thing didn't load it right. So free Karen Reed. Another picture of them. Justice for Sandra Birchmore. And I have to skip back the wrong way. Justice for Officer John O'Keefe. And I'm going to leave it at free Karen Reed. Because right now, Karen needs us. Right now, we need to stand up and speak for Sandra, for all of them. But Karen needs us right now. She's the one who's fighting for her life right now. So I want to thank you guys for coming and joining me. It means a lot to me. I'm probably going to do my next show next Sunday. I got to figure out a time, because I got to find out a time that's good, a happy medium for me. So I'm not drowned by all the other creators. But I mean, I don't care. I don't care how large my audience is. You guys are all here with me, and that's all that matters. And people will watch the replay. What's up to the replay crew? Thank you for watching. You all have a great night. Thank you for coming. And make sure you hit that like, because that'll help push it out to other people. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. I am Izzy, and I'm a mixed girl in a mixed up world. Thanks, guys.